If you ever feel the need to discredit someone's claims, just label everything they say as a conspiracy theory. It works every time. The only problem is that this term has become an easy way to brush off legitimate concerns. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 weird facts that sound like conspiracy theories. 25. A dead man on a beach had a code experts couldn't crack. Let's kick off today's list with a grand old mystery. In 1948, a man was found dead on Submarine Beach in Australia. He had no ID, the labels on his clothes were removed, and investigators believed he'd been poisoned, possibly by a cigarette. Then, things got even weirder. They found a scrap of paper in his pocket, ripped from a rare book of poetry. That exact book turned up later in an unlocked car, complete with a cryptic code that no one has cracked to this day. The Somerton man was recently identified as engineer Carl Webb, but not everyone's convinced. Many still believe he was a spy, or that the real story is even stranger than we think. 24. A single herb is helping people live past 100 in one Italian town. In Acciaroli, Italy, 15% of the population are centenarians. That is crazy compared to the global average of just 0.2%. So, what's their secret and why aren't more people talking about it? As it turns out, the only thing they do differently is eat rosemary with every meal. Rosemary is packed with antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties, and researchers believe it might just be the secret to their long, healthy lives. 23. A Soviet submarine sank in 1968, and one nuclear torpedo is still missing. In February 1968, the Soviet nuclear-armed submarine K-129 disappeared while on a mission in the Pacific. Months later, US surveillance found the wreck near Hawaii, not even close to where it was supposed to be, and recovered it, only to uncover more questions than answers. One of K-129's 3 nuclear torpedoes was missing. Or was it? A very interesting theory has come to light that suggested K-129 was on a mission to trigger World War III. Apparently, Ukrainian captain Vladimir Kobzar realized the plot lacked Moscow's approval and supplied false launch codes, knowing it would detonate the warhead. When the warhead detonated during launch, it sank the submarine. If it's true, Kobzar and his crew may have sacrificed themselves to prevent a global catastrophe. 22. Stalin asked for a unified Germany, but the West rejected it. In 1952, Joseph Stalin sent Western leaders a handwritten note that caught everyone off guard. He suggested reuniting East and West Germany as a neutral state. For a world locked in Cold War tensions, this was huge. A unified Germany could have meant peace in Europe. But the problem was, no one could figure out if Stalin was being sincere or if it was just another Soviet power play. In the end, the West decided it wasn't worth the risk and turned him down. If they'd said yes, history might look completely different. No Berlin Wall, no decades-long division. But would a united Germany have brought peace or more chaos? We'll never know. 21. A Colombian town discovered their dead do not decompose. In the 1960s, a body had to be removed from a burial vault in the town of San Bernardo, Colombia, to make space for a new coffin. To everyone's shock, the body was surprisingly well preserved. Far too well, in fact. Soon, more bodies were discovered in the same condition, looking more like they were sleeping than decades-old corpses. The mystery remains unsolved, but the answer may lie in the cemetery's location. Unlike the town's first 2 cemeteries, the third is on a steep mountain slope with above-ground vaults. Many believe that the constant hot winds there dried out the bodies, preserving them naturally. 20. A typo sealed the Titanic's fate. On April 14, 1912, the Titanic's wireless operators received several ice warnings, including a critical alert from the liner Mesaba about severe ice directly in the ship's path, intended for Captain Edward Smith. But a simple typo changed everything. Instead of marking the message with MSG, Master Must Sign, the Mesaba's operator mistakenly typed MXG. This error meant the warning wasn't prioritized and was instead tossed in with dozens of other routine messages. Had Captain Smith seen the message, the Titanic could have adjusted course in time to avoid disaster. 19. Legionnaires' disease is stalking a Spanish town. In 1999, the small Spanish town of Alcoy had an outbreak of Legionnaires' disease. More outbreaks followed, taking lives and leaving everyone asking the same question: why here? The usual suspects like contaminated showers or hot tubs were ruled out, and the mystery only deepened. Some people started pointing to environmental factors, while others thought the outbreaks might have been related to government experiments or even biowarfare. In 2009, investigators finally linked the then latest outbreak to a paving machine with a contaminated water tank, but that only solved one piece of the puzzle. The earlier outbreaks remain as puzzling as ever. 18. An unarmed man stabbed, shot, and slashed himself before falling into a lake. In 1983, an unidentified man was found dead in Florida's Everglades National Park under truly bizarre circumstances. Described as baby-faced by those who saw him, the man had suffered multiple self-inflicted injuries before his death. He sustained 2 pellet gun wounds to the head, severe slashes to his throat and wrists, and 9 deep abdominal injuries from a scalpel. Despite the injuries, he was still alive long enough to fall into a nearby lake where he was later found. 17. A caretaker left $3.8 million to his town. In 2023, the residents of Hinsdale, New Hampshire got the shock of their lives. Jeffrey Holt, an 82-year-old caretaker, lived in a modest mobile home, wore worn-out clothes, and did odd jobs to make ends meet. There was nothing about him that screamed wealth. But when he passed away, Holt shocked everyone by leaving $3.8 million to the town. His will requested that the money be used to uplift the community and fund projects in recreation, education, health, and culture. 16. A bizarre signal jammed an entire neighborhood's garage doors. In 2019, residents of a small neighborhood in North Olmsted, Ohio woke up to a strange problem. Their garage doors and car remotes stopped working. At first, it seemed like a fluke, but soon they realized the issue was affecting dozens of homes on just a few streets. Authorities began investigating and soon discovered the source: a local electronics enthusiast's homemade house alarm. The gadget, by sheer coincidence, emitted a 315 megahertz signal that interfered with the radio bands used by the garage doors. The man had no idea his device was causing the chaos, but allowed it to be dismantled and promised to not build anything similar again. 15. Lee Harvey Oswald defected to Russia and later returned to the USA. Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine, defected to the Soviet Union in 1959 at the height of the Cold War. It would be naive to think that the KGB didn't take an interest in him. Even before his defection, Oswald frequented Tokyo's Queen Bee nightclub, a known hotspot for intelligence agents. Somehow he could afford $100 a night dates there, which would be about $1,000 today. Some researchers believe that Oswald shared his knowledge as a U-2 spy plane radar controller with the Soviets, which may have helped them shoot down Francis Gary Powers in 1960. Which brings us to the most famous assassination in history, and an important question. Why did Oswald even return to the US after defecting? Before Kennedy's murder, he traveled to Mexico City, where some say he met up with a KGB officer responsible for espionage and assassinations. Was this meeting tied to the events in Dallas? It might just be that the KGB orchestrated the assassination and that Oswald was indeed nothing more than a patsy. 14. Recovered lifeboats and documents linked US soldiers to Soviet prisons. In 1950, a US reconnaissance plan known as the Turbulent Turtle vanished over the Baltic Sea with 10 crew members on board. The Soviets admitted to shooting it down, but insisted that no one survived the crash. But the recovery of intact lifeboats from the plane contradicted their claim. In the years that followed, reports from Soviet prison camps mentioned American military aviators being held captive. One former inmate even spoke of a prisoner named Robert, which could have been Lieutenant Robert Reynolds from the crew. However, the Soviets stuck to their story, and no sign of the crew or definitive evidence of their fate has ever been found. 13. A Masonic lodge hid a Nazi diary that points to billions in treasure. Now, some diaries might be boring, but this one isn't. It was kept hidden by a Masonic lodge in Quedlinburg, Germany, which had ties to high-ranking Nazi officials for decades. It was discovered when the lodge handed it over to Poland as an apology for World War II. The diary, written by an SS officer using the name Michaelis, describes Nazi commander Heinrich Himmler's secret plan to hide billions in stolen wealth across Europe. While the treasure claims remain unverified, the book lists several hiding spots, including one beneath a 16th century palace in Poland. 12. A mystery group posted complex puzzles online, and nobody knows why. Have you ever heard of Cicada 3301? In 2012, this mysterious group posted a series of puzzles online to test the intelligence and problem-solving skills of internet users. The puzzles included the odd bit of cryptography, hidden messages, and even a few strange clues spread all around the world. The group reportedly invited those who solved them to join, but what they wanted or who they were remains a complete mystery. Were they a government agency? A secret society? Cicada 3301 posted puzzles through 2013 and 2014, then disappeared without a trace. 11. A 2004 UFO sighting by the US Navy defies all explanation. On November 14, 2004, during routine training exercises, the USS Princeton's radar picked up multiple unidentified objects moving at impossible speeds. The objects were about 40 feet long, shaped like Tic Tacs, and would suddenly appear at 80,000 feet and then drop down to 20,000 feet and hover for a while before either disappearing or shooting back up. 2 fighter jets, the FA-18F Super Hornets, were sent to investigate. The pilots reported that the objects had no visible means of propulsion and could change direction or accelerate instantly. The objects vanished before they could get a closer look. 10. We still have no idea how the pyramids of Giza were built. We all know the pyramids were made from millions of stone blocks, some weighing hundreds of tons. But despite countless theories, we still can't prove exactly how the ancient Egyptians built them. The general idea is that they used ramps to transport the massive stones, but whether these ramps were straight, zigzag, or spiral remains unclear. Some theories have even suggested advanced machinery, water-based techniques, or, more wildly, extraterrestrial help. But unless we rebuild the pyramids from scratch to test every theory, we'll never know for sure. 9. A US Air Force officer disappeared, reappeared 35 years later, then disappeared again. In 1983, Captain William Howard Hughes Jr., a US Air Force officer with top secret clearance, vanished after a trip to the Netherlands. His disappearance immediately raised concerns about national security since he had information on missile launch codes, but investigations led nowhere. Then, in 2018, after 35 years, Hughes was discovered living under a new identity in California. After facing prosecution, Hughes was dishonorably discharged, and after serving a short prison sentence, he immediately disappeared again. His current whereabouts remain unknown, leaving many to wonder if this was all part of a larger espionage cover-up, or simply a personal escape from a life that became too overwhelming. 8. The Mothman sighting started in a severely contaminated area. The Mothman might be nothing more than a legend, but the TNT area in West Virginia is 100% real. During World War II, it was home to a huge ammunition plant that employed thousands. The site was abandoned after the war, leaving a massive stretch of land contaminated by toxic waste behind. It was here that Mothman sightings first began. Some people believe the creature was born of the contaminated earth, or that he could be a strange byproduct of all the chemicals left behind. Whatever he is, Mothman's connection to the TNT area only added to its creepy legend. 7. There's a company that controls half of the US GDP, and nobody's talking about it. And no matter how hard we looked, we couldn't find its owners anywhere. Just massive shareholders. The company is BlackRock, a financial giant that controls an eye-watering $10 trillion in assets. That's more than the GDP of every country in the world, except for the US and China. Despite its colossal size, BlackRock remains largely hidden from public view. And it's no wonder, since they own some of the biggest media companies in the world too. They have stakes in CNN, Fox, Disney, and even Comcast. So they can control what gets reported and quietly control an empire that rivals the world's largest economies. 6. The first US Secretary of Defense died under suspicious circumstances. In 1949, James Forrestal, the first US Secretary of Defense, died after falling from the 13th floor of the Bethesda Naval Hospital. The official explanation was self-inflicted, but the inconsistencies raised suspicions. The rope Forrestal used wasn't long enough to reach the window, and there was no sign it had touched the radiator. The guard on duty disappeared after giving his statement, and scratch marks on the window ledge suggested Forrestal may have been pushed. The mystery deepened when a top-secret memorandum from President Truman to Forrestal came to light, which authorized him to proceed with Operation Majestic 12, a secret misdirection project related to the circulation of fake UFO documents. Some believe that Forrestal may have been targeted before he could leak sensitive UFO information. 5. A prominent whistleblower died after exposing the truth about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. In 2003, Dr. David Kelly, a weapons inspector for the British government, told BBC journalist Andrew Gilligan that Iraq didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. Although he was an anonymous source, his identity ended up being leaked to the media. Just 2 days later, on July 17, 2003, Dr. Kelly was found dead in his home. His left wrist had been cut, and an autopsy revealed that he had taken 29 painkiller tablets. While his death was officially ruled to be self-inflicted, the circumstances have remained controversial ever since. 4. A create-your-own-adventure app led teens to dead bodies. Randonautica is an app that lets users set an intention and then generates random coordinates for them to explore. The idea is that the app creates spontaneous adventures, but it has led some users to incredibly unsettling places. One of the most terrifying incidents occurred when a group of teens in Seattle followed the app's coordinates to a rocky shoreline, where they found 2 sets of human remains. Given how precisely the coordinates led them to the bodies, it's hard to ignore the possibility that someone knew exactly where those bodies were. Authorities later confirmed the remains were victims of homicide. 3. The Tunguska event was preceded by strange lights and explosions. Siberia's Tunguska event in 1908 was linked to a meteor explosion, but it might be time for us to revisit the events surrounding the incident. 2 weeks before the explosion, villagers in Karolensky reported seeing a bright bluish-white heavenly body that changed shape and color before turning into a smoky ball and vanishing. They also heard gunfire-like sounds and felt the ground shake. Researchers like Felix Zeigel and Alexei Zolotov believe a UFO was responsible, pointing to the oval-shaped blast and reports of a fireball changing direction. Zolotov has even claimed to have found a metallic presence in the soil, fueling theories that the explosion was caused by a nuclear-powered craft of some kind. 2. Scientists could solve the Oxford Electric Bell mystery, but they won't. The problem is, figuring out how the Oxford Electric Bell works would mean stopping its 185-year experiment. Built in 1840 by the London firm Watkins & Hill, the bell has been ringing non-stop ever since. It's powered by 2 dry pile batteries. Normally, these old-fashioned batteries would have given out by now, but something about the bell's unique setup keeps it going. Scientists are eager to crack the mystery, but they don't want to risk ending the experiment. So the bell just keeps ringing, and the mystery remains unsolved. 1. Monsanto manufactured PCBs, DDT, and Agent Orange. When I say Monsanto, you probably think of genetically modified crops, right? Well, their reputation has been cleaned up over the years, and that says a lot. Monsanto was behind some of the most dangerous chemicals ever produced, including PCBs, DDT, and most infamously, Agent Orange. The latter, used during the Vietnam War, resulted in 500,000 babies born with birth defects. As lawsuits piled up, Monsanto shifted into bioagriculture, creating glyphosate, better known as Roundup. And even though the EPA originally linked glyphosate to cancer, they later backtracked, leading some to believe that Monsanto covered up the truth. The most intriguing part of their story is the theory that they control, or want to control, the global food supply, and that they're backed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Which leads me to the big question: if you control the food supply, do you control the world? And that's it. But wait, how about some trivia before you go? What company controls more assets than any other country in the world, except for the US and China, and has a stake in major media outlets like CNN, Fox, and Disney? Is it A, Amazon, B, BlackRock, C, JP Morgan Chase, or D, Goldman Sachs? Drop your answers in the comments below. And if you're ready to join me for some more wild facts, check out our related video, 25 Facts That Break Reality, where I explored everything from a surprisingly sophisticated society that practiced child sacrifice to the shocking truths about what makes us dumber. And as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content, and I'll catch you guys next time. Or will I? Conspiracy.